Hi, it's Erin. I'm your regular co-host of First Bite. First of all, I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in and listening to First Bite. We've been incredibly encouraged and excited by the feedback we've received and are looking forward to the future. In the meantime, if you've been enjoying First Bite, please take a moment, maybe pause your device to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening. This podcast started out as a small idea to bring convenient, tangible resources to SLPs and other professionals, and we value your feedback more than anything. Leaving those reviews truly helps us out. Enjoy the episode and thanks for listening.
Hey, Erin, have you heard that we have a promotional code for speechtherapypd.com?
I think I heard the same thing.
Yes. So as if we both hadn't heard that, but it's First Bite. So if you log on to speechtherapypd.com and enter the promotional code First Bite, it takes $10 off an annual subscription. And Erin, do you want to?
That includes all the pod courses.
Yes. And we have 4 now. I'm not sure if y'all knew that. We have 4. We have First Bite. Yeah, we do. It's Speech Uncensored. And in case y'all haven't heard of this lovely lady, she focuses on adults. And I know that there's a fair few of you out there that PRN in peds and or PRN in adults. So be sure to check out Speech Uncensored. And it also includes the Speech Link and the SLP Now podcast with Miss Marisha, who I like fangirl crush. She's awesome. Okay. All right. So promo code is
First Bite.
Whoop, whoop. And don't let it autocorrect you to BYTE because it did that to me a couple times. So there it is. Woohoo! Hi, folks, and welcome to First Bite. Fed, fun, functional resources for the pediatric clinician. I am your host on this nerd venture, Michelle Dawson, MS, CCC, SLP, the All Things Peds SLP. I am a colleague in the trenches of home health early intervention, right there with you. I run my own private practice, Heartwood Speech Therapy, in Coletown, South Carolina, and guest lecture nationwide on best practices for early intervention for the medically fragile child. First Bite's mission is short and sweet, to bring light and hope to the world for the pediatric clinician, parent, or advocate. In this podcast, we cover everything from AAC to breastfeeding, best practice for running a private practice, and all the nitty-gritty details involving feeding and swallowing by interviewing the subject matter experts themselves. We bring the data to you. Every 4th episode, I am joined by the lovely Erin Forward, MSP, CF, SLP, a Yankee transplant who actually inspired this journey and who also walks the wild, woolly, and sometimes sticky walk of early intervention with us. Sit back, relax, and watch out for all the squirrels and enjoy this geeky gig brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. So today's episode falls in the fun and functional categories as we are honoring National Black History Month with our guest, Dr. Kia Noelle Johnson, Ph.D., CCC-SLP, Chair of the Board of Directors for the National Black Association for Speech, Language, and Hearing. Today's episode is something we haven't covered before in First Bite, the lack of diversity in our field. So let me take you for a brief journey. I am, in case you haven't caught on by now, a Virginia gal by birth, from a tiny hole in the wall that didn't even have a stoplight. Then one day I went to the big city for undergrad and a breathtaking sleepy city for grad school, and then off to a quiet little town for my CF year. But it was a warm and kind one where everyone took care of everyone else, and I took for granted the grace and the kindness of the folks that I ran into. And that wasn't until I moved to South Carolina. It was the first time that I was exposed to racial tensions as a professional. It was my first time encountering interpreters and colleagues who were afraid I would turn a patient or their loved ones into ice, or the first time I had to be vouched for in order to establish buy-in and trust from minority families in the rural areas that I worked. I get it now. we aren't too far away from the I-95 corridor of shame lawsuit, also known as the Abbeville lawsuit. But y'all, it was so eye-opening. It made me think about the lack of diversity in our field. And then my time serving on our state association, it made me contemplate it regularly and how we can work to address this issue. So I'm excited because today Dr. Kia is here to open our eyes and instill hope and joy and hopefully problem solve with us. So Dr. Kia, thank you for coming on, ma'am. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very happy to talk with you today. And this is a very exciting topic.
Well, I'm glad we made our stars align because between your schedule and my schedule and then tiny humans, it is hard to be a working professional and a mom, just saying.
Exactly. I'm there with you. But you had a lot of people working on your behalf because people would come up and say, have you talked to the lady? Have you talked to her? She reached out. So I appreciate your persistence.
Well, I mean, I know a good idea when I got one. And I got to be honest, this is I mean, working in South Carolina up until just recently, we only had 2 grad schools and that was it. And so it was we have a bottleneck in our state for the need of professionals because we have so many people that want to be a speech pathologist, but there's limited options for schools in state. And then what I noticed as a clinical supervisor was that the students that I have trained all look like me. And
Yeah.
okay, so big squirrel. State associations have the opportunity to apply for ASHA grants, right? So one of the ASHA grants that I applied for years ago, and we did not get it, but I thought it was a really good idea. It was directly correlated to the Abbeville lawsuit. I applied for a grant so that we could take the funds and then you create brochures or literature about what speech pathologists and audiologists are, what we do professionally, and then go to the I-95 corridor because I was like, this is an opportunity to reach students that otherwise may not have ever heard of our profession. And I mean, I thought it was a really good idea, but like grant writing is not a strength.
But you have a good idea. That's where you start.
It was the idea because I was like, okay, so how do we teach students in low income, historically minority school districts about our fields so that we can recruit from locations that need people there that understand the culture and the background. And so I have the idea. One day I hope to see that idea come to fruition, but apparently I need assistance with comma splices and verb conjugation.
But the good thing, though, I think if you look at initiatives that our association is doing, ASHA definitely recognizes that there is this issue as well. We are trying to tackle that. Granted, it would be awesome to have grant funding to support it, but that's definitely a need. And we're trying to tackle it, but we have a lot of work to do.
So I jumped the gun with like my impassioned somebody out there help us write a grant and or fund us. But right? Double funding. But how did you become a speech pathologist? How did you find out about our profession?
So it's interesting you mentioned the comment about not knowing what we do. And so I went to school. I was raised by a single mom. My dad was definitely in the picture, but my mom was a nurse in a leadership position at a hospital. I spent a lot of time in the hospitals, emergency rooms, labor and delivery floors, just hanging out. And so I went to college with the idea of being a neonatologist. For anyone who needs to look that up, they handle the very, very sick babies that are born. And that's what I wanted to do. So I went to college as a biology pre-med major, and that was my mom's dream, my dream. And quickly I realized that talking about photosynthesis and plants and leaves, that was not what I wanted to do. I said, where are the patients? Where will I see patients? So once I realized that that wouldn't happen until medical school, freshman year, second semester freshman year, I decided to changed my major. I literally took the catalog and flipped through the catalog and said, "Ooh, communication disorders. I like to talk. Let's go observe." I went to observe a session and to see that you could work with a child to improve their speech and or language and the kid have no idea but think that they're just playing, that was exciting to me. So at that point, I changed my major sophomore year, became a ComD major, and my mom, her first question was, "So what is that?" And my mom's a nurse, she works in a medical setting. She had no idea what it was. She told me I could still go to medical school. And I think it wasn't until I got my PhD that she said, "Okay, I think you're okay. Medical school is not going to happen."
Okay,
And
so
here
but
I am.
you're one of the few that even went farther and got your PhD. So did you decide that if you're not going to do the MD, go all the way?
Yeah. So So that's it. So in undergrad, we had a group, and I'll give a shout out to my mentor there, Paula Cochran, if she ever listens to this. She was really big on technology and innovation, and she brought a group of us together, and we would just sit there and talk about different technology and ideas and research. And so did a research study in undergrad. I was a Ronald E. McNair Scholar. That's a program that helps first generation or low income or minorities, including women, get terminal degrees in their major. So I did a research study in undergrad, published it, presented it, and then went into grad school knowing that what I wanted to do was do research and actually train people who were going to become speech pathologists. I felt like I could have a greater impact on the profession if I went that route. So in my master's program, I did a thesis, the only student to do a thesis. And then I literally went into my CF telling my CF employer that I'm going to be here for a year. I'm going to look at programs, PhD programs, and after a year, I'm out. And I found myself at Vanderbilt. Stuttering came about because I've always had an interest in stuttering because I found it fascinating and more nothing against language, nothing against artic and things like that. But stuttering seemed more intriguing to me and less clear cut. Every case, I'm sure everyone will say this about all the areas, but for me, stuttering, every case was different. And you really have a chance to, if I could change something about that kid and their stuttering, I can impact their whole future. So, I like adults who stutter. I'm willing to work with them, teenagers, but something about working with kids who stutter, that has always been interesting for me and a passionate
Well,
area
I
for
am so
me.
grateful for you because we had Craig Coleman on a couple months ago talking about the fluent.
Yes, I
Yes,
know
he's
him.
amazing. But I was like, I'm so glad that you're here because this is not the thing that I do. My running joke is give me a kiddo who stutters and I guarantee I will increase the disfluency because it's just
And I feel as though I would have a better impact on that if I were training. So every semester I go, okay, those are 35 more students that will go out into the world and be equipped to work with
for
stuttering.
me, I'm like, oh, all right, you hit 2 word utterances. I'm out. Congratulations. Like, done. Michelle Dawson's gone. But like, yeah. But see, this
Yes,
is why we each have our own unique skill set, and the good Lord put us there for a reason. So go to yes.
yes,
Oh my goodness, this
definitely.
is awesome. Oh, okay.
But I know you have a plan for this conversation, but in undergrad, I went to a predominantly white institution, Truman State University. We call ourselves the Harvard of the Midwest. In the entire program, undergrad and grad, there were only two of us that would be considered in the category of minority. There was myself, and then there was another African American undergraduate student. That was it for the entire program. So it's not surprising to me that you can go into predominantly African American
Yes.
communities still now and run into people who are not necessarily well versed about what a speech pathologist does, although they could probably benefit from it, depending on what their needs
Yes,
are.
my entire grad program, we had one male, and that was one white male. And that was as diverse as my grad program got. And my undergrad program, everybody looked just like me. Which is
Yeah.
really interesting because I am, my sister teases me. When I give lectures, I had, oh my goodness, I had a picture done for something. And she goes, honey, you're so white. If you didn't have red lipstick on, you would have blended into the wall. I'm like, you're not funny. But I am actually Cherokee descendant and registered within the Potawatomi tribe in Virginia. However, the Irish,
That is that is
that
so
is, but
cool.
the Irish one, bless the genes. I go from white to red and then back. I peel really well. And then yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think I feel like our numbers are getting better, but there's still, if you have a very, very, very low percentage, it's increasing, but it's still a very, very low percentage of at least Black students in our majors and our programs and in the
Yes,
profession.
and I see that, and I see the process improvement, but I see the fear, especially on when I'm working with families that are lower socioeconomic status. And I code switch because I grew up in the middle of Nowheresville, so my thick redneck accent, for lack of a better phrase, and I know it's Appalachian in my bones, but um, if I have a family that is using a non-standard dialect, if I switch and let my vowels hang a little longer or use a diphthong, I can physically see them relaxing.
Yeah, it's and something that I have had conversations with colleagues about and even mentors about. Historically, when you think about African Americans and how we have been, let's be honest, misused in health settings and research, we are always, not always, we typically can have that baggage when we go into situations of not knowing whether or not we can trust you and trust that you're going to have our best interest at heart. And even thinking about a lot of research that people would try to do or have done years ago, you know, pitting Black children against white children, or Black people against white people, and who has the better intelligence and who has the
Mhm.
better skills. We are very skeptical, or can be skeptical, when an outsider comes in.
You and I had the
So
sidebar conversation last time we talked when I live right in downtown Columbia. So we go hiking all over with our kids because two tiny boys should not be in a house all weekend. And
yeah,
absolutely not. Otherwise, mommy will lose her sanity. And let's be honest, there's not much left.
yeah,
But there's a statue to the father of is it obstetrics? I think that's the correct word for it, obstetrics and gynecology here on the state capitol. But if you do scratch the surface of what all happened underneath, it's like horror stories. And but you have the typical person is not aware of. But okay, we can, no, I was gonna say we can sidebar this, but I do have to ask.
no. So wait, just to touch on that, I think so for me, I feel like based on the stats, we know that there are not a lot of people of color in the profession, although we know there are a lot of people of color that may need services. So, people may look at, the statue or that situation and say, oh, that doesn't happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen now, but there still can be an underlying implicit bias that people may go into situations with. So I think it's good to have conversations like this so that we can, as an African American woman or even a mom, I know that our children are being serviced by individuals that are thoughtful of that and thinking about that. And like what can I do to make sure that I establish rapport and that you feel comfortable with me as a clinician coming into your house, working with your
Yes,
family?
and I've had to work really hard over the years to almost build acceptance that I'm here for the kid. I'm going to advocate for you. I'm going to advocate for the kid. And that's But like you have to do that on like a family by family, daycare by daycare, early interventionist, service coordinator, physician. It's down to physicians, like one at a time, like just building trust. But which is doubly hard because I'm an outsider. I mean, I'm not even from the state. So it's
And I remember in my master's, I went to Howard University for my master's, and my mentor, Tommy Robinson, there, he told me, going into a career of research and going into this field, be mindful of whatever I do, make sure that it has the kid's best interest in heart in mind, from an African American standpoint. If you're doing something research related or clinically related that is not going to benefit the African American child and is going to diminish them in any way, don't do it. And so I've always taken
that's
that with
wise
me.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
How blessed are our stars that we've had good mentors before us.
Yes, definitely, definitely, definitely. And it's something that I've been holding to tell you that and because we've had sidebar conversations, the person who's recorded as being the first Black speech pathologist, she worked for a long time in Columbia, South Carolina.
Wait, are you serious? Who?
Yes, I am. I didn't want to tell you that.
Oh my goodness. That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, and Basel did some research back, I think, in 2013, and they've they've noted that Hallie Q. Brown is listed as being the first Black speech language pathologist. They called her an elocutionist back then. She was a daughter of two former slaves, um, moved to Canada from Pennsylvania through the Underground Railroad, and then she became a teacher in Columbia, South Carolina, um, and worked at some other schools there. And she worked with children and women to work on speech and speaking skills and literacy.
Oh my God, that is so cool. I just got goosebumps. That is so awesome.
She was a dean at Allen University. I guess that was in HBCU.
It's like right down the
Yeah,
street.
yeah. So she was a dean there, and she lived to be 100 years old.
Oh my stars. That's so cool.
I thought you would think that's exciting.
Yes, that is. I have a friend I'm gonna call as soon as we get done recording and be like, so check this out.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. I feel like Dr. Jackie will appreciate that.
Yeah, Hallie Quinn Brown. Yeah.
All right. So I have to ask you, because this is the perfect segue. Can you tell us the history of African Americans' prevalence and growth within the world of speech language pathology and audiology?
Okay, that's a great question. We have been doing a lot of discussion within NBASLH to make sure that our current members and student members know about the history. There has always been a small percentage of African Americans in our profession. But one thing I can tell you is that back in the late 70s, there became more discussion specifically with the Black speech pathologists and audiologists in the profession really going to ASHA to say, we have some needs that are not necessarily being met by the association. We have some needs that are specific to our communities, our Black communities, our professionals, and the people we serve. And that's sort of how NBASLH really got started, because even when you think about the Office of Multicultural Affairs, that was birthed out of these discussions. And they got together, and I think it's the 78. They had some meetings before that time, but that's when they really decided, we need our own association. We need our own group that really meets the needs of our Black communities. And then NBASLH was created and formed. And the goal has been to, of course, meet the needs of communities, but to grow the profession, and to grow African Americans in the profession. And that's been happening. It's growing, but there still is a deficit there.
Do you have the current percentages of what the like, isn't it like 97% is Caucasian and female Is that what it is off the top of my head?
So so the 2018 numbers that ASHA reports, and this is something, for your listeners to know, that ASHA does track this and report membership stats annually. And so the latest numbers they have are from 2018. I'm sure 2019 is coming soon, but 8.2% of ASHA members are considered a racial minority. And when you think about how that compares to 27% of people who consider themselves racial minorities in the US population, that's a huge mismatch. So think about it. ASHA membership, 8.2% can check a box to say that they are a racial minority, but almost 30% of the US population can also check that same box. So we know from that alone, the chances of a white person treating or working with a non-white person is high, which means they have to have, some training or education in that area of what you do, how do you establish rapport, what are some cultural concerns or considerations that you need to make. But then if you think about, so 8.2% are racial minority, 5,000, 5,700 are African American out of almost 200,000 ASHA members. 5,700 are African American. That number, I mean, and then if you go into other populations, if you think about American Indian, 555. We don't even get into the thousands. So the percentages of the diversity within ASHA membership is low. But the good thing, like I said earlier, ASHA knows this and NBASLH knows this, and we're trying to change it. So something that NBASLH has done before, and was really successful last year in doing, started going into predominantly Black high schools to talk to them about the
This is what I
profession.
wanted to do it. This is the grant. Yes.
So last year we decided to go into 3 high schools in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where we were having our convention, and talk to them about the profession. Um, ASHA completely supported it. They have materials that we can use. So they have a video that is including members of ASHA who are racially diverse. They provided us with print materials, and then we, as the face of NBASLH, went into these high schools and talked to the students. I'm passionate about that, and we're continuing that. Our convention is coming up in Houston. We're going to do the same thing in Houston. I think, to me, going into high schools and middle schools, that's where we can make the difference. Because once you, as a professor, I can tell you this, once the student gets to college and realizes, wow, there's this great profession that I could go into, has a, awesome job market, awesome future, it's too late. Um, time wise or GPA wise, how competitive it is to get into graduate school, it's too late. So we need these students to know from the time that you step foot on campus, your GPA starts, and this is a major, and your goal is to get to graduate school. Because what we find is not necessarily that we don't have students going into the major. We also have the issue of those students being competitive enough to get into the graduate programs.
It's gotten so much harder. I mean, I feel like it was so much easier for me to get into grad school, a long time ago because I have a lot of gray hair, but, like, as I need my roots touched up on Thursday this week, just saying. But, like
I understand, I'm there with you. I agree. I graduated, and I can say it. I'm okay with my CV's on the internet somewhere. Um, I finished undergrad in 2000, and I think I had like a 3.7 GPA, in the major, maybe a 3.3 overall. My GRE scores were nothing to put on the front page of a newspaper, and I got into 5 out of 7 schools
That's
that I
awesome.
applied to. But I tell my students now, if I had that record now, I definitely wouldn't, it would be much harder to get into graduate programs. And so the competitiveness is on a whole different
Okay,
level.
so I have two thoughts. One, well, the first big thought is y'all should reach out to CSAP, the Council of State Association Presidents, because this is a issue that multiple state associations have looked at. Okay, we're seeing this area of need. How can we work to address it? And if ASHA already has the resources available, then if NBASLH, am I saying that right? NBASLH, yes. If
Yes.
I don't teach articophonology, my own child is in artic therapy because ours are very tricksy. Apparently, he's fluent in his Mandarin immersion school, but ours are still not his cup of tea. But if NBASLH already has the training and the skill set, and ASHA has the resources, if we were to work together with the Council of State Association presidents and the different states leaders, that would be huge, because then NBASLH's membership and the individual state leaders could work together and like pick out career day volunteer opportunities. Because we're always trying to set up volunteer opportunities for our state membership, but it's where and how do we use our volunteers, and how cool would it be to even trickle it down? Oh, we could involve NBASLH and get the NBASLH students out there. Whoa. Oh, I like where this is going. Oh, yes.
And I have to disclose, I do wear two hats as chair of the board of directors for NBASLH. I'm also the national advisor to NBASLH as of January 1, 2020. And I will say that NBASLH has that on their radar as well. And I think, tackling it together, collaborating together, I think that's where we can really make a difference. Um, we talked about, and Bosley's talked about reaching out to CAPSID and sure that we tackle it from
Dr.
that way.
Kia,
But
okay,
I
so
think CSAP,
folks
that would
listening,
be a great
CAPSID,
idea.
can you translate CAPSID? It's the
So sorry. I knew you would ask me that. CAPSID, hold on. CAPSID. CAPSID is the Council of Academic Programs in Communication Sciences and Disorders. So if you think about all of the department chairs from the different programs get together there, they have an annual conference. And we've thought about, and Bosley's talked about going to them and maybe saying, how can we, share with you what we're doing and reach out through your programs to students, high school students or middle school students in your area to tell them about your program.
Well, I don't know about anybody in CAPSID. That's your cup of tea, but I know all the folks over at CSAP, so I will happily do an intro.
We will definitely be interested in that. That would be awesome. So connecting us, collaborating, that is a great idea.
Okay. Well, I will. They're going to be like, Michelle, what have you dragged this into now? Oh, I love this. Okay. All right. So let's go on to, can you please describe how an SLP, because most of our listeners are early interventionist or pediatrics, okay? But can you please describe how an SLP working in the world of early intervention needs to ethically assess and treat a child with a suspected language delay or impairment when a little one that we're working with has an African American vernacular or resides with a family who speaks using a regional dialect? And I know here in South Carolina, there's been some great research on Gullah and Geechee. Where I'm from, back in Virginia, we have a regional dialect called Guinea, and that's Hessian French influence from actually the Revolutionary War, which is crazy to think that that language has survived that long. But yeah, help us. What are we supposed to do?
I think it's really important to do some homework on the front end before going into an evaluation or treatment, but then also not necessarily making assumptions. Because I think a lot of times we're taught the textbook, if they are from this culture, here's what you should expect them to do. And then you go into the household or visit with the family, and that's not necessarily the case. So definitely doing some homework beforehand, researching the culture, and actually talking to someone from that culture would be very helpful. And I know sometimes that can make individuals uneasy, of being the, white person going up to someone saying, I want to have coffee to talk with you about
Dude, that
culture.
is my world. I live in a state of awkwardness. And I was like, I have this idea. Let's do this podcast. And I was so worried people are going to think I was nuts. So, like, yeah.
No, so when I talk to students, here and at my previous institution, I've talked to students about cultural diversity, and I always say, I rather you be uncomfortable now so that you can be comfortable when you come into different situations. So you can read all you want about a culture, but it's awesome to get firsthand knowledge and have an opportunity to really just ask questions. And so definitely doing some homework beforehand, but going into the case, not necessarily making an assumption that that family is going to do every single thing that you have in your mind that they may do. And it's also okay to make mistakes. If I always see the clinician who may have said something inappropriate or did something inappropriate and they totally go red and apologize 5 million times. It's okay to we all make mistakes. Apologize and keep it moving. And something else, and when you are making your assessment and if you think that there may be something that's culturally related, checking it out first, because I've seen instances where African American children are on caseloads or have diagnoses that are completely related to dialect and not a disorder. I think we're getting um, better at producing speech pathologists that understand the difference between a communication disorder and a communication difference, although there's still a percentage of SLPs out there that did not get that training when they were in school. Like I think back when I was an undergrad, I don't remember getting a lot of in-depth training on what is a communication difference. I did in my grad program, but not necessarily in undergrad at that time. So you think about all the SLPs who are still practicing, who were educated before then, or coming out of school before then, they probably didn't get that training. So those are things that
And
I would
one
suggest.
thing I have noticed that some of the newer edition of some of the standardized assessments, they actually include in the standardized assessments dialectal variations, like guidelines, which I like. I mean, okay, let me be honest. People that are listening, I believe that we can all concur that the Pearson's production of the PLS-5 leaves a body wanting when it comes to validity, specificity, and sensitivity of diagnoses. I highly encourage, in case you have not yet done it, please read ASHA's position statement on the validity, specificity, and sensitivity of the PLS-5. However, one thing that they did do a good job of was at the beginning, they gave, if you actually go through and read the manual, and let's be honest, how many of us actually
Can you say that again? Can you say that again? Say
read
that
the
part
manual?
again.
Yeah,
Read the
do it.
manual.
Do it. Read the freaking manual. Open the manual to the PLS-5 to the
Yes.
self. I don't remember which edition the self is on now. Read the manual to self 4. Read the manual for is it Goldman Fristo's on their 3rd edition now? And then, oh God, Arizona is another one. Read the manuals and they give you guidelines for, okay, this is standard English, but this is a dialectal variation that's okay. So do not score this as erroneous. And
Yes. And also, though, if you look in the manual and it doesn't give you that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't use the test, but just know that when you get the results, you may need to be more cautious in giving a lot of weight to it, depending on what the results look like. We just used, so I do also do research. So stuttering is my area, but I'm interested in bilingualism and stuttering. So I've done work with Spanish, English, Urdu, and English, and also working with a colleague here, Dr. Mills, on dialect. So children who speak African American vernacular English compared to those who are more standard American English and looking at their speech disfluencies. And for the Urdu study, we used the self screener. And some students were failing it, some students were passing it. And these are students, when you talk to them or do a language sample, there really is no issue. My student dissected the manual and she goes, Dr. Johnson, the sample, there are no students who represent anything close to, and I said, exactly, that's the issue. But we're using it. Yes, if these students were in, we have a huge Urdu English population here in Fort Bend County outside of Houston. If we're using that as a screener, you can have students that are failing it, but the test wasn't created with them in mind.
I see. This is where everybody pretty much swallows the same. I'm grateful for the little world that I live in.
That's right. And something else, thinking back to the question of what to do with what to think about, it's not even just about the speech or the language or dialect and things like that, but also thinking about culturally, we do things differently. So if you going into working with a family, we need some conversation first. How are you? How are things going? How's the new year going? We have culturally, we like to have some discussion or conversation, establishing rapport before jumping right into it. So uh, for example, I was having a conversation with someone else. We don't call elders by their first name. It's always Miss such and such
That
or Mr.
I
such
was
and
raised
such.
to do that. And I think that honestly, like my family didn't come from much. And I associate when I hear somebody call reference with a miss first, I associate it with Southern and socioeconomic status in my head because I was raised, I
Okay.
was raised that everybody says miss, but I did that in Arizona one time with a lady who was old enough to be my great grandmother, and she was briefing and I was setting the table up for her and I said, "Now, miss, can I get you anything else, ma'am?" And she said, "If you ma'am me one more time, I'm gonna beat you with this cane." And I said, "Oh my God, ma'am, I'm so sorry. Ma'am, I said it again." Like,
And,
yeah.
so let me add to that and help you with this. So in our culture, it doesn't have to do with SES. And regional, but so like you would be, I would instruct my kids to call you Miss Michelle. My children should never, ever, ever, ever call you Michelle. But I have friends who are from other cultures and I've gone in their household and it's the
Mhm.
same way, but they may say your Aunt Michelle or Auntie Michelle. But yeah, so to me, it's even more of a cultural thing. Like, I've run into individuals who, hi SES, and they're older than me. I call them Miss such and such. I
Mhm.
don't,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's I just assumed it was because we grew up poor that's why we call everybody miss.
Yeah, and so I think what you're talking to about is like down here in Texas, everyone, says yes ma'am, no ma'am. And that was being from the north, being from Chicago, that was an adjustment for me because my students would say yes ma'am, no ma'am, and I'm like, no, I'm not that old. Don't ma'am me yet. But don't call me Tia either.
I, when somebody calls me Mrs. Dawson, I'm like, do I look like my mother-in-law? Please, if you want to do it, just call me Miss Michelle. I mean, I'm not. Although I used to take offense when my students did it because I was like, I'm really not much older than them, but now I'm old enough to be their mothers, and I'm like, okay, maybe we should.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are the things like to think about, especially if you're going into homes, and if you are not from that culture, just know that you're really going to need to establish rapport with that family and make sure that that family knows that you are there with the kids' best interest at heart. You are not there to judge or compare their life to your life because culturally that may look different. And that's okay. And there's a difference between it being different versus being wrong, you
Yes.
know?
Okay. And while you're in that light, in that vein, ladies and gentlemen listening, one thing that I have learned, regardless of any culture that you are working with, any home that you are working with, always pack a pair of socks with you. Because some
Yes.
homes, when you go into them, I mean, I always wear socks, but like some homes will ask you to take your shoes off either outside of the door or just inside the door. And I've had students that I like forgot to inform that, and they're like, I didn't wear socks. And I'm like, you're going to need to wait in my car.
Yeah.
Here's my car keys, go chill for an hour, I'll be back. But like that's and always ask where. Do not assume, like in my family, when you walk in the door you wash your hands in the kitchen sink, but some families let their dishes soak in the kitchen sink, and so you're going to need to go to the bathroom. So always ask when you walk in the door. I like to wash my hands before I come in, because germ warfare, we are battling germs, right? So leave your personal pathogens at the door, but ask where to go first.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of what is the saying? When in Rome, do as the
Yes.
Romans. I'm not good
I
at
know
sayings, but
I know what you're
yeah,
getting at.
if I go into someone's home, I want to be respectful of their home because it is their home. So, and not be offended if, um, if they ask you to do something, within reason, they ask you to do something that is unusual to you. Like you said, taking off shoes. It's interesting you mentioned that because in our house, upstairs you don't wear shoes, and I will ask you to take your shoes off. And once I had an Asian family come in, and he said, "Wait, you all take off shoes in your house?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, their culture, they do it for, deeper reasons. And I'm just like, I just don't want your dirty shoes on my carpet. But, um, but seeing that I think if we as a society look at commonality versus differences, everything in the world would be
Yeah.
so much better because we have so many things in common that we
Well,
just
I
don't
think
think
we've just
about.
kind of lost the ability to be kind. Like, I mean, setting aside everything else, like really truthfully, like, and I know I am the rose colored glasses. Like, people pick on me about that. Like, I am the eternal optimist, but my heart is filled with joy because I have seen true horrors. So, like, I think if you have my colorful creative past and the crazy ex-husband that I had, you look for the joy, you find it, and you don't let it go. So, like, but that's a conversation for adult beverages and cheese at a later point in time.
We can have that conversation later. Um,
Okay.
and I think one thing I want to make sure your listeners think about, we always use the term cultural competence, but I don't know if we fully understand what that means. And a lot of times people will say it's just being competent about culture. And I'm going, yeah, that doesn't tell me what it means. And if we think about what it means, it talks about being eager to learn about someone's culture, taking the time out to understand, value, respect, honor someone's differences. And I think if we really worked on always looking for opportunities to improve our cultural competence when we're working with patients, that will that will help. That will help because you'll come in contact with people from different cultures and you'll be ready because you have already built upon your cultural competence.
See, I all I could think of is the time that I failed miserably because I had never heard of the word um, halal, and I educated a family
Yeah.
about the texture of the food that the child should be eating, and I was like, like this, and I was working at a clinic, and I pulled out a can of Beanie Weenies and handed it to the
Oh my
family, and everybody
God.
literally jumped up from the table and like was looking at me like I was the devil, and I was like, like Beanie Weenies, this is the perfect consistency. And they're all screaming at me, halal, halal. And the mom didn't speak English, and the dad was a university Ph.D. professor. And I'm standing there with this can of Beanie Weenies, like, what just happened? And like, thank God my student at the time was from Atlanta, so she was cultured. And like, she goes, they're halal. I was like, honey, do you need water? What are you trying to tell me?
Yeah,
So like I got cultured really quickly, and then put it back on the shelf and pulled out the can of peas and carrots and gave it to the family, and they were like, "Yes, thank you, yes, thank you." Yeah.
yes,
So,
yeah. But see that elevated your
oh
cultural
yeah, real
competence, and
quick, rapid fire style. Oh my god, oh that was. Yeah, I still can't believe I did that, but we learn. We are all a work in progress.
yeah, here at University of Houston, I talk to the students every semester about culture, and I literally say, think about a culture that you are lacking knowledge in, or you feel uncomfortable around, and that's what I want you to focus on for the rest of the semester. Literally seeking out opportunities to engage with that culture so that you can elevate your cultural competence. I think we need to like self-talk, like talking to yourself and saying, self, what area am I lacking in? Because we all, say, I love everybody, world peace for everyone. Um, but I think if we really had some self-reflection, what culture or cultures do I feel uncomfortable with or not know a lot about? And now let me be active in trying to engage with that culture and not just getting on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not
No.
going to do it.
As soon as you say that, my immediate thought is the deaf culture, just because of the population that I serve.
Yeah.
Like that's my gut. I like that. Okay, so our Pact Awesome motto for 2020 is the philosophy of less is more, because like
Mhm.
I have a tendency to say yes to too many things on multiple
Oh
fronts.
gosh, me
Right,
too.
right. And then also like we live in a everybody keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, but like less is more,
Yeah.
like less aftercare activities or after school activities so we can focus on that. But like this is one of those things that um I think that would be awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I,
So if you were in this lecture, I would say, okay, deaf culture, what can you do between now and June to physically engage with that culture?
oh,
And whatever that is, set a goal and make it
yes.
happen.
Okay, I will do that. I'm immediately thinking of um they they do family get-togethers where like everybody goes out to eat like once a month. And I've seen them, we've run into
Mhm.
them. And I think that's so cool because yeah. Okay.
It's go
No,
ahead, I'm
I'm just
sorry, go
thinking
ahead.
I'm adding this to my to-do list. This is not less is more, but this is joyful, so we're doing it.
And so if there's anyone out there who wants to, if they're like, I want to learn more about African American culture or Black culture, I always make the suggestion, no matter what your beliefs are, find a local Black church and go visit. I mean, to me, that is the one place that you can get a crash course on culture. I ran into a lady at the grocery store who she lives. I hope she doesn't listen to this. Well, I'm not saying her name. She She lived very close to my church, and she just randomly asked me what church I went to. I told her, she said, "I live very close to that church," and she was white, and she said, "But I have to ask, do you," I said, "have to be Black to come?" She goes, "How did you know?" I said, "Yeah, I was thinking that would be your question, and absolutely not. You do not have to be Black. You just have to want to come to church." And we get the question with that with NBASLH. People ask the question, do I have to be Black to be a part of NBASLH? And I tell people, think of us just like all the other multicultural constituency groups. You just have to have a passion, a desire, an interest in doing things to aid communication services to the Black community or to Black professionals. We have lots of members who are not African American. Like I'm a part of the Hispanic caucus. I am not Hispanic, but I have an interest in the needs for Hispanic children.
That's awesome.
So that's just something to just put out there. If any of your listeners are going, but wait,
That was
and
gonna be one of my
and what
questions because, like, I did not know. I assumed incorrectly that it was only for minorities and not for not minorities.
Right. Think about NBASLH as the place you can go if you are definitely wanting 100% communication disorders knowledge relating to cultural diversity. When it comes to working with professionals, working with students, working with patients, we are the place to come to, because you think about our Black students that are in these programs. Think about it, Michelle. They're usually sitting in a class, the only Black student. They're usually having to face issues that non-Black students are not having to deal with. And they're usually having a professor who does not look like them and may not understand the challenges that they're facing. And Basel would be the place that we can help you with that. Like, we're the place to go to if you want to increase your cultural competence in this profession. That's where we're here.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the question at the end, but your conference is in Houston. When is it?
It is April 15th through the 18th in Houston, Texas. We have a convention every spring, usually in April, every April. And this would be, I think, our 42nd conference. I could be wrong on that. Somebody's probably going to email me after listening to this. Say, no, it's the 43rd.
It's okay, but I'm gonna
But
ask you again at the end. But like that was like the perfect segue to be like, y'all, they have a massive conference and it's really amazing. And
yes,
I've heard that it's as much fun going to the conference as it is ASHA. So like,
yes. So if you think about the way I like to explain it, so ASHA, you have your workshops, your seminars, your posters. You have the open house on Friday. In Basel, you have your workshops, your seminars, your posters, and and once that ends every night, it is pure social networking. It's a great opportunity for mentorship. It's great for mentors who want to mentor students. The ASHA board always is there. Board members are always present. It's an opportunity for students to really talk to the people who started it all. Like, I remember my first NBASLH convention was in Milwaukee. I was able to actually talk to and meet the people that I read about or was reading about in this field. So, like the pioneers who started the discussion about Black dialect, they were the ones that started in Basla, and they were the ones coming to the convention and getting to meet them. Just 2 years, was it 2 years ago? Last year, one of the pioneers, two of them, Eugene Wiggins, Orlando Taylor, they were present. To be in their present gives me goosebumps. So the Embasa convention is about 400 attendees. It's definitely smaller than ASHA, more intimate. Great networking opportunities nationwide. We have a peer-reviewed call for papers that happens every December. Yeah, we're all, and no, you do not have to be Black to come. We also have a praxis review course that happens simultaneously with the conference. So we have a lot of students who come to the convention solely to take our 2-day praxis course, 2-day, 3-day, 2.5-day praxis course.
oh, I don't know if I could sit through 2.5 days of a praxis course, but I really do like the 1 hour. Like, I like watching the praxis games when like this, like when you go to like state associations and they have like the students like from the different schools like do battle with
Yes,
one
we have
another. Yeah, that's
Yes, we have a practice bowl that happens, but for the praxis course, so those would be the student. Our course is tailored to those individuals. We know statistically that people of color tend to not pass the praxis the first time through,
really.
and for that reason, some pioneers from Mbasla, Kay Payne over at Howard University did some research in this and decided that we need to develop a course that would make sure that our students, those that are repeating the praxis exam because they didn't pass the first time, that they can come and get they cover test taking skills, they cover reviewing topics that are covered on the praxis, talking about the structure of the praxis. And we have a lot of first time praxis um, test takers that will come and take it as well from every background, every university. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, that's my last question was how could someone get involved in NBASLH, and if you could talk a little bit about the Student Minority Leadership Program at ASHA, because
Okay, great.
that's
So,
and we have 5 minutes because I have to give us time for
okay.
Q&A. And like I hate being the person that like is the timekeeper. I've never been a secretary on any board I volunteered on because I'm like, typing and calculators
But you're
and things.
doing great.
I'm
You know,
trying. I'm trying.
the conversation between two SLPs, we love to talk, so it's always, it's always good. So for NBASLH, definitely visit nbasla.org. Information about how to be a member is there. Information about our convention is there. It happens again every year. We also have scholarships posted if there are any students who
Oh, that's
are
awesome.
yes, travel support there. We also have affiliates. So think of affiliates as chapters in some of our bigger cities. There are affiliates that you can become a member and then connect with that affiliate to serve that specific community. So definitely at the ASHA convention, we always have a booth. And we always, for the last 3 years, have been having mixers at the ASHA convention. So always look for NBASLH at the ASHA convention. No, you don't have to be a member to come to the mixer as well. And then for the convention, if you have some research that you want to share with NBASLH, call for papers always happens in November, December-ish. No, I'm sorry. I think it opens in September and closes about December. So consider submitting and presenting. The Minority Student Leadership Program, shout out to class of 2006. I was in the class of 2006. It is a great program through ASHA with the purpose of developing leaders that are of racial minority groups. And you apply, I believe, in April or the spring, and the program basically supports you coming to the ASHA convention, and you get a behind the scenes view of the different committees, different committee meetings. You get an opportunity to give speeches before professional leaders within ASHA that are giving you input on your presentation skills, your ability to take a topic and develop a talk from it. It really hones in on developing your leadership so that when you become a professional within the association, you would be ready to go into some of those leadership roles. So I started out 2006, MSLP since that time. I've been on the board for NBASLH, now chair of the board of NBASLH, and now on the ASHA Board of Directors as the national advisor to NBASLH. So the program is competitive, but it's definitely worth it.
Okay, so 2 shameless plugs. One, the end of the month, we have NBASLH coming. Miss
I
Natalie,
heard.
I know, I am so excited. And I feel really strongly about this because we've always struggled as state associations to get students involved. And
Hmm.
so when NBASLH came to CSAP, that blew everyone's mind that here come in all these incredibly well-spoken students. So,
Yes.
and a couple of them I think had gone through the Student Minority Leadership Program.
So
And that
so
was
if you
amazing.
think that's the future of
Yeah.
that's the future of ASHA.
Yeah.
So I think about when I work with students within NBASLH, students in my university, and now having the opportunity to work with the NISLA students, I feel like that's my way of giving back to the profession.
Yes. And that's okay. So I say this on how many episodes, but y'all, if you are not already a clinical supervisor, please seriously consider doing it
Yes,
because we need we need clinical supervisors from all walks of life that are willing to give of their time and their energy. I view it as part of my tithe, like
yes,
wholeheartedly, because that's our future. Those students treat my babies treat my grandparents
Yeah.
and will one day treat me, because
Yeah.
I know the crazies run in my family. So like, I figure I got about 50 years before dementia sets in. So like, I want to be listening will have me. Just slip me a little red wine every once in a while on a Friday night. We call it score. But that's in my little nursing home. I can already see Michelle Dawson in the nursing home. It's gonna be great. But that's just it. Pay it forward. And my other shameless plug, I did the ASHA leadership program a lifetime ago, it feels like. And my project, what I went in with is not what I ended with, because I went in on scope of practice encroachment. But we had a tragedy happen in Charleston, and I'm not sure if anybody's listening to it, but several years ago, a boy went into Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and committed a heinous crime, and we lost 9 members of our state. One of those was Sharonda Coleman Singleton, and she lost her life in the middle of a Wednesday night Bible study. And she was an outstanding speech-language pathologist that worked in the public schools and was a coach. So our state association created something called the Sharonda Coleman Singleton Memorial Scholarship. I'm trying not to cry, so if I'm messing up the name, please forgive me.
Okay. No, it's okay.
And it is designed for a minority student that has good grades, is a student athlete, and active in their church, because we modeled it on her life so that we could carry her life forward. And we have given away, I think it's 4 scholarships. We give away one every February. And it's to a speech pathology major here in the Palmetto State. So if you're listening and you fit the requirements, we would love for you to apply and to put more good in the world. So yeah, I'm trying really hard not to cry, but
can I tell you something that may make you smile? She's actually Sharonda Coleman Singleton was my sorority sister.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she was she was an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman. And so I think that's really, and that plus being an SLP, I think that's really good to have that.
I had no idea. I never knew her. I mean, I was volunteering on our board, and when all of this happened, and I was like, let's set up a memorial run. So we do the memorial run every October, and we've made it virtual that way. There's no overhead. Folks can contribute, and all of the money goes directly to the scholarship. And her undergrad and grad programs and alumni and colleagues, and it's just really cool to see it go right back to the students. Actually, the kicker for SC State was a recipient a couple years ago. and oh my goodness, everybody was all excited that it was a man. We were like, yes.
That's right. Well, if there's anything that we can do, and Basel can do to support that, just definitely let us know. Yeah. And awesome. I hope that we can get you to an Basel convention one day.
Oh man, I will. Let me save my pennies. I in the future, yes, for 2020, my one financial goal is to sit for the BCSS exam.
Yes.
And I'm sinking every penny into studying cranial nerves, because you know what? On Old Olympus Towering Tops, a Finn and German viewed some hops only gets you so far, and that does not make you pass a test. So like
exactly.
But yes, after I earn that, then honey, I am game on. But
yes,
Lord, I gotta learn more than that. This was great. Kia, thank you so much. Okay, real quick before we switch to questions, because we are so far over. April 6th through 8th. Is that what you said?
April 15th to the, sorry, let me say that again. April 15th through the 18th in Houston, Texas, and registration is open. And we'll be at the Omni Houston Hotel in Houston, Texas.
Beautiful. Awesome. Hot stuff. Okay. Well, let me switch over to questions and hold tight real quick, okay?
Feeding Matters guides system-wide changes by uniting caregivers,
professionals, and community partners under the Pediatric Feeding Disorder Alliance. So what is this alliance? The Alliance is an open access collaborative community focused on achieving strategic goals within 3 focus areas: education, advocacy, and research. So who is the Alliance? It's you. The Alliance is open to any person passionate about improving care for children with a pediatric feeding disorder. To date, 187 professionals, caregivers, and partners have joined the Alliance. You can join today by visiting the Feeding Matters website at www.feedingmatters.org. Click on PFD Alliance tab and sign up today. Change is possible when we work together. That's a wrap, folks. Once again, thank you for listening to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional. I'm your humble but yet sassy host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. This podcast is part of a course offered for continuing education through speechtherapypd.com. Please check out the website if you'd like to learn more about CEU opportunities for this episode, as well as the ones that are archived. And as always, remember, feed your mind, feed your soul, be kind, and feed those babies.